The sound of shattering glass followed Lorelai Thompson through the door of the general store, and she did not even turn around to see what they had thrown this time. Her boots kicked up dust on the main street of Silver City, New Mexico territory, as she walked with her head held high despite the burning shame in her chest. It was August of 1878, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the small town that had made it abundantly clear she would never belong. "Freak!" someone shouted from behind her, probably Mrs. Henderson again, the baker's wife who seemed to take particular pleasure in making Lorelai's life miserable. "Keep your cursed eyes away from decent folk." Lorelai's fingers tightened around the small bag of supplies she had managed to purchase before being run out. Her eyes, one the color of warm honey and the other a striking pale blue, were the mark that had made her an outcast since her family had arrived in Silver City 3 years ago. Heterochromia, the traveling doctor had called it when her mother brought her in as a child, worried something was terribly wrong. Nothing was wrong medically, but try telling that to superstitious townspeople who saw her different colored eyes as a sign of witchcraft or demonic possession. Her parents had passed during the harsh winter 2 years back, victims of pneumonia that swept through the territory. Since then, Lorelai had been surviving alone in the small cabin her father had built on the outskirts of town, taking in mending and washing when people would allow it, which was not often. Most preferred to believe she would curse their clothing rather than clean it. The walk back to her cabin took 20 minutes, past the saloons and boarding houses, past the sheriff's office where Sheriff Dalton pretended not to see the harassment she endured daily, past the church where Reverend Matthews had suggested, perhaps, she should worship separately so as not to disturb his congregation. Each landmark was another reminder that she existed in this town, but was not part of it. She had nearly reached the edge of town when she heard hoofbeats behind her. Lorelai tensed, preparing to be run off the road, but the rider slowed as he approached. She risked a glance and saw a man she did not recognize, which was unusual in a town as small as Silver City. Everyone knew everyone, and strangers were notable. He sat tall in the saddle, wearing a dusty brown hat that shaded his face, a worn leather vest over a blue shirt, and chaps that had seen considerable use. His horse, a beautiful paint with a calm demeanor, walked alongside her without the rider saying a word. Lorelai kept walking, ignoring him as she had learned to ignore most everything. "Afternoon, miss," the stranger said, his voice carrying a pleasant drawl that spoke of Texas origins. "That's a long walk in this heat. Can I offer you a ride?" "No, thank you," Lorelai said quickly, not looking at him. Men who offered help usually wanted something in return, and she had nothing to give except more reasons to be scorned. "Suit yourself," he said, but he did not ride ahead. Instead, he continued at her pace, and Lorelai felt annoyance prickle along her spine. "Are you following me?" she asked, finally turning to look at him directly. That was when Isaac Jensen got his first clear look at her face, and Lorelai braced herself for the inevitable reaction. His eyes would widen, he would make some sign against evil, he would spur his horse and leave, or worse, he would join in the harassment. Instead, Isaac smiled. It was a genuine smile that reached his eyes, which were a deep brown that reminded her of rich soil after rain. "Well, I am heading in this direction, so I suppose I am. Just rode into town looking for work. The man at the livery said there might be some ranches hiring hands out this way." Lorelai stared at him, waiting for the reaction, but it did not come. He looked at her face, at her mismatched eyes, and his expression did not change beyond what seemed to be appreciation for what he saw. She did not know what to do with that. "You are going the wrong way for the major ranches," she heard herself say. The Barrett Ranch and the Sullivan Spread are both east of town. This direction only has small homesteads. I appreciate the information, Isaac said, tipping his hat. I am Isaac Jensen, by the way. Most folks call me Isaac. Lorelai Thompson, she replied before she could think better of it. That is a beautiful name, he said, and there was nothing mocking in his tone. Lorelai, I do not think I have heard it before. My mother chose it from a book of poetry, Lorelai said, then wondered why she was sharing this with a complete stranger. She never talked to people if she could help it. Talking led to them seeing her eyes, which led to fear and hatred. Your mother had good taste, Isaac said. They had reached the path that led to her cabin, and Lorelai stopped. This is where I turn off, she said. The Barrett Ranch is about 5 miles if you head back to town and take the East Road. They are usually hiring. Isaac looked down the path, then back at her. You live out here alone. That is none of your concern, Lorelai said, defensive now. She had learned that admitting she was alone and unprotected was an invitation for trouble. I did not mean any offense, Isaac said, holding up one hand. Just seems isolated is all. Well, Miss Thompson, it was a pleasure meeting you. I hope we cross paths again. He tipped his hat once more and turned his horse back toward town. Lorelai watched him go, confused by the entire interaction. He had looked right at her, had seen her eyes clearly in the bright sunlight, and had not reacted beyond normal friendliness. It made no sense. She shook her head and walked down the path to her cabin, trying to put the strange cowboy out of her mind. She had mending to do for Mrs. Patterson, one of the few women who would hire her, because she paid half what anyone else charged, and Lorelai needed the money too desperately to refuse. The cabin was small but sturdy, her father's handiwork evident in every corner. Lorelai had kept it as neat as possible, though some things were falling into disrepair that she did not have the skill or strength to fix. The roof leaked in one corner during rains, and the door stuck unless you lifted it just right. Still, it was home and it was hers, and it was better than the alternative of trying to find a place in town where the hatred was thick enough to choke on. She spent the evening working on the mending by lamplight, her stitches small and precise. Her mother had taught her well, and even those who despised her could not argue with the quality of her work. It was past midnight when she finally set aside the last item, a shirt with buttons that needed replacing. Sleep came slowly, as it often did. In the quiet darkness, loneliness pressed down like a physical weight. Lorelai tried not to think about what her life might have been if she had been born with normal eyes, if her parents had lived, if anything had been different. Such thoughts only led to tears and accomplished nothing. She woke to the sound of hammering. For a moment she thought she was dreaming, but the steady bang, bang, bang continued. Lorelai threw on her dress and rushed outside to find Isaac Jensen on her roof, nailing down loose shingles. "What are you doing?" she called up, shading her eyes against the morning sun. Isaac looked down and smiled that same genuine smile from yesterday. "Morning, Miss Thompson. I noticed you had some shingles coming loose here. Thought I would fix them before the next rain." "I did not ask you to do that," Lorelai said, bewildered and suspicious. "Why are you even here?" "Well, I went to the Barrett Ranch like you suggested," Isaac said, climbing down the ladder Lorelai had not even known was there. They were not hiring after all. Then I got to thinking about this cabin being so far from town and that roof looking like it had seen better days, and I figured I could be of help. "I cannot pay you," Lorelai said flatly, "if that is what you are expecting." "Did I ask for payment?" Isaac replied, his tone mild. "Sometimes a person does a thing just because it is the right thing to do." Lorelai crossed her arms. "Nobody does things for me out of kindness. What do you want?" Isaac set down his hammer and looked at her directly. Miss Thompson, I want nothing except perhaps a cup of water if you can spare it. It is getting hot already." She studied his face for signs of deception, but found none. Against her better judgment, she went inside and brought out a cup of water from her pump. Isaac accepted it gratefully and drank deeply. "Thank you," he said. "That hits the spot. Now I also noticed your door is sticking. Mind if I plane it down a bit?" "Why are you doing this?" Lorelai asked, frustration creeping into her voice. "Nobody helps me. Nobody even talks to me unless it is to call me names or throw things. So, what is this really about?" Isaac set down the cup and looked at her with those steady brown eyes. "I saw how those people treated you in town yesterday. I asked around about you at the saloon last night. Heard all about how folks think you are cursed or some such nonsense because of your eyes." Lorelai felt her face flush with shame and anger. "And yet here you are. What do you want to get a closer look at the freak? Satisfy your curiosity?" "No," Isaac said simply. "I am here because those people are fools, and I thought you might appreciate someone seeing you as a person instead of a superstition." The words hit Lorelai like a physical blow. She felt tears prick at her eyes and furiously blinked them back. She would not cry in front of this stranger, no matter how kind he seemed. "Your eyes are different," Isaac continued, his voice gentle. "That is true. They are also striking and beautiful, like looking at amber and winter sky at the same time. I have traveled all over Texas and through the New Mexico territory, and I have never seen anything quite like them. But that is all they are, different. Not cursed, not evil, just different. And different is not a bad thing, no matter what small-minded people might think." Lorelai did not know what to say. No one, not even her own parents who had loved her, had ever called her eyes beautiful. They had been kind about them, reassuring, but always with an undercurrent of apology for the hardship they caused her. "You do not know what you are talking about," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You do not know what it is like." "You are right, I do not," Isaac agreed. "But I know what it is like to be judged for something you cannot control. I know what it is like to be pushed out and told you do not belong. Maybe not for the same reasons, but the feeling is the same." "What could you possibly have been judged for?" Lorelai asked, hearing the bitterness in her own voice. "You look like every other cowboy I have ever seen." Isaac's expression grew more serious. "My mother was Mexican. My father was a white ranch hand from Tennessee. I grew up not white enough for the white folks, not Mexican enough for the Mexican families. Caught hell from both sides, told I did not belong anywhere. So I learned to make my own place, to judge people by who they are rather than what they look like. And I learned that the people who do the most rejecting are usually the ones most afraid of anything different from themselves." Lorelai absorbed this, seeing Isaac in a new light. He did have slightly darker skin than many of the cowboys she had seen, and now that he mentioned it, his features carried a heritage she had not consciously registered before. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "That must have been difficult." "It was," Isaac acknowledged. "But it made me who I am, and I like who I am well enough. Just like your eyes made you who you are. The question is, do you like who you are?" No one had ever asked Lorelai that before. She thought about it, really thought about it. "I do not know," she admitted. "I have spent so long just trying to survive, trying to avoid the worst of people's hatred, that I have never considered whether I like myself. I just exist." "That is no way to live," Isaac said. "Now, how about I fix that door and maybe you can tell me more about yourself? The real you, not the person this town has decided you are." Before Lorelai could respond, they heard horses approaching. She tensed immediately, recognizing the voices before she saw the riders. 3 young men from town, sons of the wealthy ranch owners, rode into her yard with the entitled swagger of those who had never faced real consequences for their actions. "Well, "Well," said the one in front, Clayton Barrett, son of the ranch owner Isaac had visited. "Looks like the witch found herself a friend, or maybe she put a spell on him." "Get off my property," Lorelai said, her voice steadier than she felt. These three had harassed her before, though never when she was not alone. "Your property," laughed another, James Sullivan. "Your daddy built this cabin on land he did not own properly. Everyone knows that. You are just squatting here." That was a lie. Lorelai had the deed her father had filed, signed, and legal, but she had learned that truth mattered little when people wanted to believe something else. "The lady asked you to leave," Isaac said, his tone still friendly but with an edge of steel underneath. "I suggest you listen." "Who the hell are you?" Clayton demanded. "Some drifter. You do not want to get mixed up with her. She is cursed, probably already working her evil on you." "The only curse I see is the ignorance on display right now," Isaac said, stepping forward. "And I have about had my fill of it. You boys need to ride out now." "Or what?" James said, his hand moving toward the gun at his hip. "You going to draw on 3 men?" The tension ratcheted up instantly. Lorelai felt fear clutch at her chest. She did not want violence, especially not over her. "Please just leave," she said to Isaac. "They will go eventually. They always do." "After we have our fun," said the third man, Thomas Henderson, the baker's son. "Maybe we should teach this drifter what happens when you associate with witches." Isaac's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted. Lorelai recognized it, having seen it in the rare, dangerous men who passed through town. He was ready to fight, and from the suddenly uncertain looks on the 3 young men's faces, they recognized it too. "Here is what is going to happen," Isaac said calmly. "You 3 are going to turn those horses around and ride back to town. You are going to leave Miss Thompson alone from now on. And if I hear about anyone bothering her, I am going to be very disappointed. And trust me, you do not want me disappointed." "You threatening us?" Clayton blustered, but his hand moved away from his gun. "I am making a promise," Isaac replied. "Now are we done here?" For a long moment no one moved. Then Clayton jerked his horse's head around. "Come on, she is not worth the trouble. Probably did curse him anyway. Let him figure it out on his own." The 3 rode off, throwing back insults and threats, but they rode off nonetheless. Lorelai released a breath she had not realized she was holding. "You should not have done that," she said. "Now they will make trouble for you too." "Let them try," Isaac said, his relaxed demeanor returning. "I have dealt with worse than 3 boys playing at being men. Now about that door." Despite herself, Lorelai laughed. It was a short, surprised sound, rusty from lack of use. She could not remember the last time she had laughed. Isaac smiled at the sound and set to work on the door. Lorelai watched him work, still not quite believing this was happening. After a while, she went inside and made biscuits from her meager supplies, bringing them out with butter she had traded washing for. "You did not have to do that," Isaac said, but he accepted the food gratefully. They sat on the porch steps, eating in companionable silence. "Why are you really here?" Lorelai asked after a while. "In Silver City, I mean. You said you were looking for work, but there are bigger towns with more opportunities." Isaac finished his biscuit before answering. "I have been drifting for about 5 years now, since I was 23. Worked ranches all over, never staying too long. I guess I was looking for a place that felt right, you know. Somewhere I could put down roots. Silver City seemed as good as any place to try." "It is not," Lorelai said bluntly. "The people here are small-minded and mean. If I had anywhere else to go, I would leave." "Why do you not?" Isaac asked. "I do not mean that unkindly, but what is keeping you here?" Lorelai gestured at the cabin. "This is all I have. My parents built this, lived here, died here. It is the only home I have ever known. And I do not have the money to go anywhere else. I can barely afford to feed myself. Every coin I make goes to survival. What if you had help? Isaac asked. What if you were not alone? Lorelai looked at him sharply. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that maybe we could help each other, Isaac said. You need someone to fix up this place, to provide protection from those idiots who harass you. I need a place to stay while I look for more permanent work. We could come to an arrangement. I told you I cannot pay you, Lorelai said. I am not asking for pay, Isaac replied. Room and board would be enough. I have some money saved up. I can contribute to supplies. And I am a pretty good cook if I do say so myself. People would talk, Lorelai said. They already think I am a witch. Having a man living here would just confirm everything they believe about me. Do you care what they think? Isaac asked. The question stopped Lorelai cold. Did she care? She had spent years caring desperately what people thought, trying to be small and quiet and inoffensive, hoping they would eventually accept her. It had never worked. I do not know, she admitted. I suppose I do, even though I know I should not. Well, think about it, Isaac said, standing and stretching. I am going to finish that door, then I need to head back to town to get more supplies. If you decide you want help, I will be at the boarding house tonight. If not, I will head out tomorrow and you will never see me again. The thought of never seeing him again created an unexpected hollowness in Lorelai's chest. In just over a day, Isaac had shown her more kindness than she had experienced in years. The idea of going back to complete isolation felt unbearable. Wait, she said as he turned to go. You can stay. If you really want to, but I need you to understand what you are getting into. Those three today, that is nothing. The whole town hates me. They will make your life difficult just for associating with me. You will not get work. People will refuse to serve you. They might even run you out of town. Let them try, Isaac said again, that steady confidence in his voice. I have weathered worse storms than the disapproval of Silver City, New Mexico territory. Besides, I like you, Lorelai Thompson. I like your strength and your directness. I like that you have survived things that would have broken most people. And I think, given time, we could be good friends. Friends. Lorelai turned the word over in her mind. She had not had a friend since she was a child, before her eyes became a barrier between her and everyone else. All right, she said, surprised by her own boldness. You can stay. There is a small lean-to on the side of the cabin that my father used for storage. We can clear it out, make it livable. It would not be much. It would be more than enough, Isaac said, his smile bright enough to rival the sun. Thank you, Lorelai. You will not regret this. She hoped he was right. Over the next few weeks, life changed in ways Lorelai had never imagined possible. Isaac proved to be a man of his word and then some. He repaired the roof completely, fixed the door, reinforced the walls, and turned the lean-to into a snug little room for himself. He bought supplies with his saved money, refusing to let Lorelai go without proper food. More than that, he talked to her. Really talked, not the brief, frightened exchanges she was used to. He told her stories of his travels, of the places he had seen and the people he had met. He asked her questions about her life, her interests, her dreams. Dreams, something Lorelai had stopped allowing herself to have. I used to want to be a teacher, she admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. I loved reading, learning new things. I thought maybe I could help children learn to love it too. What stopped you? Isaac asked, though they both knew the answer. My eyes, Lorelai said. No school would hire me. No parents would want their children taught by someone they believe is cursed. It was a foolish dream. It was not foolish, Isaac said firmly. It was stolen from you by prejudice and fear. That is not the same thing. Lorelai appreciated his words, even if they could not change reality. What about you? What did you dream of before you started drifting? Isaac was quiet for a moment. I wanted a family, he said finally. A real one, where people belonged to each other and looked out for each other. I never had that growing up. My father left when I was young, could not handle the harassment over marrying my mother. She did her best, but she died when I was 17. After that, I was alone. I have been alone ever since. The raw honesty in his voice made Lorelai's heart ache. I am sorry, that must have been terrible. It was, Isaac acknowledged. But maybe that is changing now. We are both alone, but we are alone together. That is something. It was something, more than something. As the days turned into weeks, Lorelai found herself looking forward to Isaac's company with an intensity that both thrilled and frightened her. She had spent so long protecting herself from hurt that letting someone in felt dangerous. But Isaac was patient. He never pushed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. He respected her space, her boundaries, even as he gently encouraged her to open up. The town's reaction was exactly as Lorelai had predicted. When Isaac went to town for supplies, people refused to serve him. The few who would charge him outrageous prices. He was denied work at every ranch and business. Men muttered threats. Women clutched their children away from him as if he carried disease. You could leave, Lorelai told him after a particularly bad trip to town resulted in him being refused service at the general store. Go somewhere else where you have not been tainted by association with me. And miss out on your company, Isaac replied, his tone light but his eyes serious. Not a chance. Besides, I am more stubborn than they are mean. I will outlast their nonsense. His unwavering support meant more to Lorelai than she could express. She tried to show her appreciation through actions instead, cooking his favorite meals, mending his clothes with extra care, keeping the cabin spotless. One evening, about 6 weeks after Isaac had arrived, they were sitting on the porch when he suddenly said, "Would you teach me to read better?" Lorelai looked at him in surprise. "You can read, I have seen you." "I can read simple things," Isaac clarified, "but I never had much schooling. My reading is slow and there are a lot of words I do not know. You have all these books and I see how you love them. I thought maybe you could share that with me." The request touched Lorelai deeply. Teaching, the dream she had given up, offered to her by the one person who saw value in what she had to offer. "I would love to," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We can start tomorrow if you like." They started the next day and continued every evening after the day's work was done. Lorelai discovered that Isaac was a quick learner when given patient instruction. His face would light up when he successfully worked through a difficult passage, and Lorelai found herself living for those moments of shared joy. As Isaac's reading improved, he began reading aloud to her, his voice giving life to the words on the page. They worked through her small collection of books, from adventure novels to poetry. When he read a particularly moving love poem one night, his eyes met hers across the lamp light, and something shifted between them. The air felt charged, heavy with unspoken feelings. Lorelai's heart raced as Isaac slowly set down the book and moved closer to her on the porch bench. "Lorelai," he said softly, "I need to tell you something, and I hope it will not make things awkward between us." "What is it?" she asked, though part of her already knew, already hoped. "I have come to care for you," Isaac said, his brown eyes searching her mismatched ones. "More than care for you. These past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. You are smart, strong, funny, kind. You are everything I did not know I was looking for. And your eyes, God, your eyes are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. When you look at me, it is like being seen by two different perspectives at once, like you see more of the world, more of me, than anyone else could." Lorelai felt tears streaming down her face before she realized she was crying. "I care for you too," she whispered. "So much it scares me. I never thought anyone could see me as anything but cursed. I never thought I could have this." "You can have this," Isaac said, reaching up to gently wipe her tears away. "You can have anything you want, Lorelai. You deserve everything good in this world." "I want you," Lorelai said, the words escaping before she could second-guess them. "I want this, whatever this is between us." "It is love," Isaac said simply. "I love you, Lorelai Thompson. I think I have loved you since you turned and looked at me that first day, all fierce and proud despite everything this town has put you through." "I love you too," Lorelai said, testing the words and finding them true. "Isaac Jensen, I love you." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. It was Lorelai's first kiss, and it felt like coming home, like finding a piece of herself she had not known was missing. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and smiling, Isaac said, "Marry me." Lorelai laughed, giddy with happiness. "We have only known each other 6 weeks. I have known enough in 6 days to know you are who I want to spend my life with," Isaac countered. "But if you need more time, I can wait. I will wait as long as you need." Lorelai thought about it. She thought about the years of loneliness behind her and the possibility of happiness ahead. She thought about Isaac's steadiness, his kindness, his absolute acceptance of who she was. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Isaac's whoop of joy startled the birds from the nearby trees. He picked Lorelai up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her again, deeper this time, and Lorelai felt desire kindle in her belly, warm and exciting and new. "We should wait," Isaac said when they came up for air, though he looked pained to say it. "Until we are married, I mean. I want to do this right. I want to give you all the respect and honor you deserve." Lorelai appreciated his consideration even as her body protested the delay. "When?" she asked. "When should we marry?" "As soon as possible," Isaac said. "Tomorrow, if we can manage it. I do not want to wait to start our life together." Getting married proved more complicated than they anticipated. The Reverend Matthews refused to perform the ceremony, claiming he would not participate in whatever evil Lorelai was working on the poor, deceived Cowboy. The circuit judge was not due in Silver City for another month. They could travel to the next town, but that was 3 days' ride and expensive. They were discussing their options when an unexpected visitor arrived at the cabin. Sheriff Dalton, a man Lorelai had written off as complicit in the town's treatment of her, rode up one afternoon looking uncomfortable. "Miss Thompson, Mr. Jensen," he greeted them formally. "I hope I am not intruding." "What do you want, Sheriff?" Lorelai asked, unable to keep the coldness from her voice. This man had watched her be harassed countless times and done nothing. "I want to apologize," Dalton said, dismounting and removing his hat. "And to offer my services if you will have them." "Apologize for what?" Lorelai asked skeptically. "For not doing my job," Dalton said heavily. "For letting you be mistreated because I was too coward to stand up to the majority. I have watched you suffer for 3 years, Miss Thompson, and I did nothing. It has weighed on my conscience something terrible. When I heard you two wanted to marry and were being refused, I decided I had to do something right for once." "What can you do?" Isaac asked, his arm coming protectively around Lorelai's waist. "I am licensed to perform marriages in the territory," Dalton said. "Have been for 10 years, though I rarely do it. But I can marry you, legal and binding, if you will allow me to make up for some of my failures." Lorelai and Isaac looked at each other. "Why now?" Lorelai asked. "What changed?" "I saw how Jensen here stood up to the Barrett boy and his friends," Dalton admitted. "Saw a man willing to risk himself to protect someone he cared about. It reminded me of the man I used to be before I let fear make me small. I cannot change the past, but I can try to do better going forward. So what do you say? Will you let me marry you?" "Yes," Isaac said before Lorelai could respond, "but on one condition. You start doing your job from now on. Anyone harasses Lorelai, you shut it down. No more looking the other way. Dalton nodded. You have my word, and I will make it known around town that I performed this marriage, and anyone who has a problem with it has a problem with me. They were married 2 days later in the cabin, with Sheriff Dalton officiating. It was a simple ceremony with no guests, but to Lorelai, it was perfect. She wore her mother's best dress, carefully preserved, and Isaac wore a new shirt he had bought on a trip to the next town over. They spoke their vows with hands clasped, eyes locked. The world narrowed down to just the two of them. I, Isaac Jensen, take you, Lorelai Thompson, to be my wife. I promise to love you, honor you, protect you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. Your difference is your beauty. Your strength is my inspiration, and your love is my greatest treasure. I, Lorelai Thompson, take you, Isaac Jensen, to be my husband. I promise to love you, honor you, support you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. You saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I was rejected, loved me when I felt unlovable. I will spend my life showing you the same grace you showed me. When Dalton pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed Lorelai with a tenderness that made her heart swell. She was married. She had a husband who loved her. It felt like a miracle. That night, in the cabin that was now truly their home, Isaac made love to Lorelai with patience and care, guiding her through the nervousness of first intimacy into realms of pleasure she had never imagined. Afterward, lying in his arms, Lorelai felt a peace she had never known. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Isaac asked, his fingers gently tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "For seeing me," Lorelai said. "For loving me. For giving me a life I thought I could never have." "You gave me the same," Isaac replied, kissing the top of her head. "We saved each other, I think." Life as a married couple was not without its challenges. The town's hostility did not disappear overnight, though Sheriff Dalton kept his word about intervening when harassment occurred. People still muttered and stared, still refused service when they could get away with it. But it mattered less now. Lorelai had Isaac, and Isaac had Lorelai, and together they were stronger than apart. Isaac found work with a small rancher named Edward Torres, who needed help and did not care about town gossip. The pay was modest but steady. Lorelai continued taking and mending, though she raised her prices. If people wanted her skill, they could pay fairly for it. Some refused, but others, grudgingly or not, paid what she asked. They saved money carefully, planning for the future. Isaac talked about buying land, starting their own small ranch. Lorelai dreamed of maybe one day opening a school for children whose parents could not afford formal education or who, like her, were rejected by traditional institutions. 4 months after their marriage, Lorelai realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another month to be certain before telling Isaac, and his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her again, just like when she had accepted his proposal, his face alight with joy. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "We are going to be a family." They were careful with Lorelai's health during the pregnancy. Isaac refused to let her overwork, taking on extra jobs to make up for the mending she could no longer manage as her belly grew. He fussed over her diet, her rest, her comfort, to the point where Lorelai sometimes had to tell him to stop hovering. The town's women, despite their prejudices, could not quite bring themselves to completely shun a pregnant woman. A few, the ones with kinder hearts, began to soften toward Lorelai. They brought by baby clothes their own children had outgrown, offered advice, and shared their own pregnancy stories. It was not acceptance, not really, but it was better than outright hostility. Mrs. Patterson, whose mending Lorelai had done for years, was the first to fully come around. She appeared at the cabin one day with a beautiful hand-quilted blanket. "For the baby," she said gruffly, not meeting Lorelai's eyes. "Every child deserves a warm blanket." "Thank you," Lorelai said, genuinely touched. "This is beautiful work." "I also want to apologize, Mrs. Patterson continued, still not looking at her. "I have not been kind to you. I let my fear and my ignorance guide me instead of my Christian values. You have never been anything but honest and hardworking, and I repaid that by treating you poorly. I am sorry." It was the first direct apology Lorelai had received from anyone in town, and it meant more than Mrs. Patterson probably knew. "I forgive you," Lorelai said. "Thank you for coming." Other apologies followed, slow and often awkward but genuine. Not everyone came around. The Barrett family, the Sullivans, the Hendersons, they remained hostile. But enough people softened that Lorelai could walk through town without constant harassment. It was a strange new reality. Lorelai went into labor on a cold February night in 1879. The local midwife, Mrs. Chen, came despite the hour and the weather. She was a practical woman who cared more about bringing healthy babies into the world than about superstitions. The labor was long and difficult. Isaac paced outside the bedroom, his worry evident in every line of his body. Mrs. Chen periodically came out to reassure him that everything was progressing normally, but Isaac would not be calm until he heard his child's cry. Finally, as dawn broke over the New Mexico territory, a baby's wail filled the cabin. Mrs. Chen emerged, smiling, and said, "You have a son, Mr. Jensen. A healthy, strong son, and your wife did beautifully." Isaac rushed into the room to find Lorelai propped up against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Meet your son," she said softly. Isaac approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the baby. The infant had a cap of dark hair and was crying lustily, his face red with the effort. As Isaac watched, the baby opened his eyes. One eye was brown like Isaac's. The other was pale blue like one of Lorelai's. "He has your eyes," Isaac said, his voice choked with emotion. "Both of your beautiful, perfect eyes." Lorelai looked down at their son and felt a fierce, protective love surge through her. This child would be different, just as she was different. But unlike her, he would grow up knowing he was loved, knowing his difference was beautiful, knowing he had parents who would fight the world for him if necessary. "What should we name him?" she asked Isaac. They had discussed names but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Isaac said, "What about Matthew, after your father?" "Matthew Jensen," Lorelai tested the name. "I like it, and his middle name should be Lewis, after your mother." "Matthew Lewis Jensen," Isaac said, sitting on the bed next to his wife and son. "It is perfect." "He is perfect. You are perfect. This whole moment is perfect." Raising Matthew came with challenges they had anticipated and some they had not. As the boy grew, his heterochromia became more pronounced and striking. They had prepared themselves for the town's reaction, ready to defend their son as fiercely as necessary. But something unexpected happened. The people of Silver City, many of whom had softened toward Lorelai during her pregnancy, looked at baby Matthew and saw not a curse, but a child. A beautiful, happy child with an unusual feature. Children who might have been taught to fear Lorelai found Matthew fascinating instead. They wanted to play with the baby with different colored eyes. The new generation was not learning their parents' prejudices, at least not about this. And as the children led, some parents followed. It was not a complete transformation. There were still those who muttered about bad blood and curses. But Matthew's presence in the world seemed to shift something in Silver City's collective consciousness. As Matthew grew into a toddler, bright and curious and utterly unaware that he was supposed to be different in a bad way, Lorelai and Isaac built their life into something solid and good. Isaac had become foreman at the Torres Ranch, a position of respect and responsibility. Lorelai had started teaching reading and writing to a small group of children whose parents could not afford the school fees, holding classes in their cabin twice a week. On their third wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Lorelai with a deed to 40 acres of land adjacent to their cabin. He had been saving for 2 years, working extra hours and taking on additional jobs. "I want to build something for us," he told her as she stared at the deed in wonder. "A real ranch, something we can pass down to Matthew and any other children we might have. Something permanent, something ours." "Other children?" Lorelai asked, smiling. "Are you hoping for more?" "I am hoping for whatever makes you happy," Isaac replied. "But yes, I would love more children. I would love a whole house full of them if you are willing." Lorelai kissed him. "I am willing. I never thought I would have even one child, and Matthew is such a joy. I would love to give him siblings." Their second child, a daughter they named Lily Marie, was born in the spring of 1881. She had Isaac's brown eyes and Lorelai's facial features, a beautiful blend of both her parents. Matthew, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and insisted on helping with everything, though his help was often more hindrance than assistance. By this time, the Jensen family had become a respected part of Silver City. Isaac's hard work and fair dealing had earned him a reputation as a man of integrity. Lorelai's teaching had shown the community her intelligence and patience, and their children, growing up happy and loved, were proof that difference did not mean cursed. The ranch Isaac had dreamed of began to take shape. With help from Edward Torres and some of the men Isaac had worked with, they built a larger house, a barn and corrals. They started with a small herd of cattle and a few horses. It was modest, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and sustained by their own labor. One day, when Matthew was 4 and Lily was 2, Lorelai was in town for supplies when she encountered Clayton Barrett. He was older now, married with a child of his own, and some of the arrogance had been worn away by life. "Mrs. Jensen," he said, stopping her on the street. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Lorelai tensed, old instincts screaming at her to flee, but she stood her ground. "What is it, Mr. Barrett?" "I want to apologize," Clayton said, the words clearly difficult for him. "For the way I treated you before you were married. The things I said, the things I did, they were wrong. I was young and stupid, and I let my father's prejudices become my own without thinking. I am trying to be better now, trying to raise my son to be better than I was. I am sorry for the pain I caused you." Lorelai studied him, looking for signs of insincerity, but found only genuine remorse. "Thank you," she said finally. "I appreciate you saying that. It takes courage to admit when you were wrong." "More courage than I had back then," Clayton said. "Your husband showed me what real courage looks like when he stood up for you. I have never forgotten that. It made me take a hard look at myself, and I did not much like what I saw." "People can change," Lorelai said. "I have seen it happen. I am glad you are trying to do better." After Clayton left, Lorelai stood in the middle of the street, marveling at how much her life had changed. 6 years ago, she had been alone, hated, barely surviving. Now she had a husband who adored her, 2 beautiful children, a home, a community that was slowly learning to accept her, and a future full of possibilities. That night, she told Isaac about the encounter. They were sitting on the porch of their new house, watching the sunset while the children played in the yard. "It is strange," she said. "I spent so long being defined by other people's hatred. Now I am being defined by their acceptance. But I think I am finally learning to define myself by who I know I am, regardless of what anyone else thinks." "Who are you, Lorelai Jensen?" Isaac asked, pulling her close. I am a woman who was rejected for being different, Lorelai said. I am a woman who was loved for the same reason. I am a wife, a mother, a teacher, a survivor. I am someone with unusual eyes and an unusual life, and I am finally happy with both. Isaac kissed her temple. I am so proud of you, proud of us, of what we have built together. Their third child, another son they named Daniel Isaac, was born in 1883. He had Lorelai's honey-colored eyes in both sockets, and for a brief moment, Lorelai felt a pang of something she could not quite name. Was it disappointment that he did not share her heterochromia? Was it relief that he might have an easier path? But when she looked at Daniel, saw his perfect little face and his bright, curious gaze, all she felt was love. Different or not, her children were treasures, each one unique and precious. Matthew, now 4, had started asking questions about his eyes. "Why are mine different, Mama?" he asked one day. Lorelai knelt down to his level. "Because you got one from me and one from your papa," she explained. "It makes you special. It means you see the world from two different perspectives at once." "Is it bad to be special?" Matthew asked, and Lorelai's heart clenched. He had heard something, some comment from someone in town. "It is never bad to be special," Lorelai said firmly. "Some people fear what they do not understand, and they might say unkind things. But that is about their fear, not about you. You are perfect exactly as you are, and do not ever let anyone tell you different." "Papa says my eyes are like yours," Matthew said. "He says yours are the most beautiful he has ever seen." "Your papa is a smart man," Lorelai said, pulling Matthew into a hug. "And you have beautiful eyes just like mine. Do not ever be ashamed of them." As the children grew, the Jensen ranch grew with them. What had started as a modest operation expanded into a successful enterprise. Isaac's knowledge of cattle and horses, combined with Lorelai's head for numbers and planning, made them a formidable team. They hired hands to help with the work, always treating their employees fairly and paying honest wages. Lorelai's teaching also expanded. What had started as a few children in her cabin grew into a proper school building that Isaac built on their property. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and history to any child whose parents would allow them to attend, regardless of their ability to pay. Some paid with money, others with goods or labor, and some paid nothing at all. Lorelai did not care. She had finally achieved her dream of teaching, and she would not let anyone's financial situation keep their children from learning. The school became something of a novelty in the territory. People heard about the woman with different colored eyes who taught children that others had given up on. Some traveled from other towns to enroll their children. Lorelai welcomed them all. One of her students was a girl named Sarah who had been born deaf. The local school had refused to take her, claiming she could not be taught. Lorelai learned sign language from a book she ordered from back east, then taught Sarah and her classmates. Within a year, Sarah was reading at the same level as her peers, and the class had become proficient enough in sign language to communicate with her easily. News of Lorelai's school spread. A newspaper reporter from Santa Fe came to write a story about her. The article, published in early 1886, was titled "The Teacher Who Sees with Two Different Eyes." It spoke of Lorelai's heterochromia, her struggles with acceptance, and how she had turned her experience of being different into a strength that allowed her to teach children who were themselves different or struggling. The article brought attention, both positive and negative. Some praised Lorelai's innovative teaching methods and her inclusive approach. Others criticized her for teaching above her station or for promoting dangerous ideas about equality and acceptance. Lorelai read both kinds of responses and found she did not much care about either. She was doing work she loved, work that mattered, And that was enough. By 1887, the Jensens had 4 children. Their youngest, a daughter named Rose Lorelai, had been born the previous year. She had 1 brown eye and 1 honey-colored eye, a combination of both her parents. Matthew, now 8, took his role as oldest brother seriously, always looking out for his siblings. Lily, at 6, was showing signs of being a gifted artist, constantly drawing pictures of the ranch and the family. Daniel, at 4, was fearless and adventurous, always getting into scrapes that gave Lorelai gray hairs. Life was full, busy, chaotic, and utterly wonderful. There were hard days, of course. Ranching was difficult work, subject to the whims of weather and market prices. Teaching was emotionally demanding, especially when dealing with students who had been badly treated by others. And raising 4 children was exhausting, but there were also moments of pure joy. Like when Matthew read his first book all the way through by himself, his mismatched eyes bright with pride. Or when Lily presented Lorelai with a drawing of the family, every detail lovingly rendered. Or when Daniel learned to ride his first horse, whooping with delight as he cantered around the corral under Isaac's watchful eye. Or when baby Rose took her first steps, stumbling into Lorelai's waiting arms. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Lorelai into town for dinner at the hotel restaurant, leaving the children with a trusted neighbor. It was a rare evening out, just the 2 of them, and Lorelai dressed in her finest gown, a beautiful blue silk that Isaac had bought her for the occasion. As they walked through town to the restaurant, Lorelai noticed people's reactions. Some still stared at her eyes, but the stares were more curious than hostile now. Several people greeted them warmly, congratulating them on their anniversary. It was a far cry from the days when she could not walk down the street without being insulted. Over dinner, Isaac raised his glass. "To my wife," he said. "The strongest, smartest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. Thank you for saying yes to a drifter cowboy 10 years ago. You made all my dreams come true." "You made mine come true too," Lorelai said, clinking her glass against his. "I never thought I could have this, any of this. A loving husband, beautiful children, work that matters, a place in the community. You gave me all of it." "We gave it to each other," Isaac corrected gently. "I was drifting, lost, looking for somewhere to belong. You gave me a home, a purpose, a family. We built this life together." After dinner, they walked slowly back to the ranch, hand in hand under the stars. The desert night was cool and clear, the sky ablaze with stars that seemed close enough to touch. "You ever regret it?" Lorelai asked suddenly. "Staying here, tying yourself to me when you could have gone anywhere, done anything?" "Not for a single second," Isaac said without hesitation. "Every choice I made led me to you, and I would make them all again in a heartbeat. You are my home, Lorelai. You and our children, this life we have built, this is where I belong." Lorelai leaned her head on his shoulder as they walked. "I love you, Isaac Jensen. I love you too, Lorelai Jensen, today, tomorrow, and every day after." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Matthew grew into a thoughtful young man with his mother's intelligence and his father's steady nature. He helped run the ranch and assisted Lorelai with teaching, showing a particular gift for working with struggling students. Lily's artistic talents blossomed. By the time she was 14, she was taking commissions for portraits and landscapes, her work sought after throughout the territory. She used her different colored eyes as inspiration, creating art that explored themes of perspective and seeing the world in new ways. Daniel became a skilled horseman and cattleman, working the ranch alongside his father. His fearlessness sometimes worried Lorelai, but Isaac assured her it was channeled into useful work rather than reckless behavior. Rose, growing up in a household where difference was celebrated rather than scorned, was confident and outgoing. She made friends easily and had inherited her mother's love of teaching, often helping with the younger students at the school. In 1895, when Matthew was 16, he came to his parents with news. "I have been accepted to the teaching college in Santa Fe," he said, his voice a mixture of pride and nervousness. "I want to be a teacher like Mama. I want to help kids who do not fit in, who are told they are different in a bad way. I want to show them that different can be good." Lorelai felt tears streaming down her face as she pulled her son into a hug. "I am so proud of you," she said. "You are going to be an amazing teacher." "I learned from the best," Matthew said, hugging her back. When Matthew left for school that fall, it was hard on the whole family. But they all knew he was pursuing his dream, just as Lorelai and Isaac had pursued theirs. And he came home every few months, full of stories about his studies and excited about his future. In 1898, Silver City held its first official town celebration, and the organizing committee asked Lorelai to speak about the town's history and growth. It was an acknowledgement of how far both she and the town had come. Standing before the crowd, looking out at the sea of faces, some old and some young, Lorelai spoke from her heart. "When I first came to Silver City, I was a frightened girl with eyes that made people uncomfortable. I spent years believing that my difference made me less than, that I would never belong anywhere. But I learned something important. Our differences are not weaknesses to be hidden or shameful secrets to be kept. They are strengths to be celebrated, unique perspectives to be valued. This town rejected me for being different. But one man, my husband Isaac, loved me for the same reason. He saw that being different meant seeing the world in a unique way, bringing something new and valuable to the table. And his love, his acceptance, gave me the courage to stop hiding and start living. I look around this town now, and I see children learning that difference is not something to fear. I see neighbors helping neighbors regardless of what they look like or where they come from. I see a community that is slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely trying to be better. That gives me hope for the future." The applause was thunderous. Later, people came up to Lorelai to thank her for her words, to tell her how she had changed their thinking, to apologize for past wrongs. It was overwhelming and humbling and wonderful. As Lorelai and Isaac walked home that evening, their children grown or nearly so, their ranch prosperous, their life together everything they had hoped for and more, Isaac said, "You know what I think about sometimes?" "What?" Lorelai asked. "That first day I saw you, walking out of town with your head held high while people threw things at you. You were so strong, so proud despite everything. I knew right then that you were someone special. I am grateful every day that I was smart enough to see it." "You saw me when no one else would," Lorelai said. "You loved me when I felt unlovable. You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams." "We gave each other that," Isaac said, echoing words from years before. "And we are not done yet. We have years ahead of us, more adventures to come." He was right. They had many good years left together. Years of watching their children build their own lives. Matthew became a renowned educator, opening schools across the territory for children who did not fit the traditional model. Lily's art was displayed in galleries as far away as New York. Daniel took over running the ranch, expanding it further while maintaining his parents' values of fair treatment and honest dealing. Rose became a doctor, one of the few women physicians in the territory, dedicating herself to serving communities that had limited access to medical care. All 4 children married and had children of their own, giving Lorelai and Isaac a house full of grandchildren to dote on. Some of the grandchildren had heterochromia, that striking difference that had once been seen as a curse, but was now understood as simply a unique feature, something that made them special. Lorelai continued teaching until she was 70, only retiring when her eyesight began to fail. Isaac ran the ranch until he was 75, then passed full ownership to Daniel while still offering advice and support. They spent their later years traveling to visit their children and grandchildren, spreading their time between the various households that made up their extended family. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1928, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren filled the house and yard with noise and laughter. Lorelai, now 70 years old, looked around at the family she and Isaac had created and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Isaac, at 73, was still tall and strong, though his hair was white now, and his movements slower. He found Lorelai in the kitchen, pulled her into his arms, and waltzed her around the room to the music drifting in from outside. 50 years, he said, smiling down at her. Best 50 years of my life. Mine too, Lorelai said, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. Thank you for seeing me, Isaac. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for letting me, Isaac replied. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me. They danced in the kitchen, surrounded by the sounds of their family, celebrating 5 decades of love that had started with a cowboy who saw beauty in difference, and a woman who learned to see it in herself. When Lorelai passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1935, at the age of 77, she died knowing she had lived a full, rich, meaningful life. She had been loved deeply, had raised wonderful children, had taught hundreds of students, and had helped change a town's mindset about difference and acceptance. Her funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives she had touched. Isaac, heartbroken but grateful for the years they had shared, lived another 3 years. He spent his final days surrounded by family, telling stories about Lorelai, making sure the grandchildren and great-grandchildren knew about the remarkable woman their grandmother had been. She was rejected for being different, he told them in his final days. And I loved her for the same reason. Her difference made her special, made her see the world in ways others could not. Never forget that being different is not a weakness. It is a gift, if you have the courage to embrace it. Isaac passed away in 1938 at the age of 83 and was buried next to Lorelai in the Silver City Cemetery. Their graves sat beneath a cottonwood tree, marked with simple stones that bore their names, the dates of their lives, and a single inscription that Matthew had chosen. They built a life of love from seeds of rejection. The Jensen Ranch continued for generations, run by their descendants who carried on the values Lorelai and Isaac had established. The school Lorelai had founded became a permanent institution, eventually growing into a full education center that served the region. Lily's artwork hung in museums, and copies of her paintings depicting her mother with her striking heterochromia became iconic images celebrating difference and beauty. The story of Lorelai and Isaac became a legend in Silver City and beyond. The woman who had been rejected for her different colored eyes and the cowboy who had loved her for them became symbols of acceptance, courage, and the transformative power of love. Their story was told and retold, teaching new generations that difference should be celebrated rather than feared, that love can triumph over prejudice, and that sometimes the things that make us different are the very things that make us extraordinary. In Silver City, New Mexico Territory, where once a young woman had walked alone through hostile streets, children now grew up learning about Lorelai Jensen, the teacher with 2 different colored eyes who showed them that being different was not just okay, but beautiful. And they learned about Isaac Jensen, The cowboy who had seen past prejudice to the woman beneath, whose love had helped transform both a life and a community. Their legacy lived on in every student who learned that their differences made them special, in every person who chose acceptance over fear, in every act of love that bridged the gap between different and same. Lorelai and Isaac had started with nothing but each other and had built something that lasted far beyond their own lives. It was a love story, yes, but it was also a story of courage, of growth, of a community learning to be better. It was the story of how one woman's rejection became another woman's redemption, how one man's acceptance became the foundation for a lifetime of love, and how together, two people who did not fit the mold created a mold of their own, one big enough to welcome anyone who had ever felt different, rejected, or alone. The Wild West of 1878 was a harsh place, especially for those who did not conform. But in that harshness, Lorelai Thompson and Isaac Jensen found each other, built a love that lasted a lifetime, raised a family that changed the world in small but meaningful ways, and proved that sometimes the very thing the world rejects you for is the exact thing someone else will love you for. And that love, that acceptance, that willingness to see beauty in difference can change everything.